Hello everyone, this is the meeting of the Area Planning Committee South and West on Thursday the 22nd of April 2021. I'm John Clare, I'm and I am in the chair. You're all very welcome indeed. I'm going to start, if possible, please, by asking the officers present to indicate who they are and what their role is.
Stephen Pilkington, Principal Planning Officer.
John Byers, Area Team Leader.
Jill Errington, Senior Committee Services Officer.
Neil Carter, I'm the Solicitor to the committee.
And that's it, I think. To the members of the public present, you are particularly welcome. It's really important that planning is seen to be open, that it's seen to be fair, and that particularly it allows both people for and against to have their voice. And it's important that that is continued as well. The only thing I would point out is that it's not a negotiation. This is a meeting which will decide either yes or no, and therefore somebody will go away upset and very often annoyed after this meeting. That is the nature of the system. There's nothing we can do about it. Our job is to observe and make a fair and objective decision based not on whether we like it or not, but on planning rules, and hopefully the process will make that explicit. Let's start with the agenda. Apologies for absence, Jill.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillors David Bell, Eunice Huntington, Gary Huntington, Joyce Maitland and George Richardson.
Thank you very much indeed. Substitute members?
There are no substitute members, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No,
Chair.
thank you very much. Oh, sorry, yes?
Chair, I've got a declaration of interest, but I'll declare it at the start of my speech.
Thank you very much indeed,
Thank
yes.
you.
And Anita, you're present in your capacity as the local member. You'll have your say and then you'll be leaving the meeting, I understand.
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
Thank you, that's absolutely in accordance with the rules. Minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of March 2021. Are there any problems that anybody had?
Move acceptance, Chair.
Can we have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And finally, we move to the application to be determined, which is the building southwest of St Anne's Centre, West End, Walsingham, in the park. I was driving past the park only last weekend. Right, let's begin the process. Steve Pilkington, can you give us your report on it, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just load up that presentation. I'll leave it a second or two.
Now I can see that.
Yeah, hopefully it hasn't quite come up on my screen yet. Yeah, okay, hopefully that's come up on everyone's screen there. Yeah, so this application seeks planning permission for the conversion and extension of an existing building to form a food, refreshment sales kiosk and WC facilities at Walsingham Recreational Ground. The application site is edged in red and is located within the established Walsingham Recreation Ground, where there are a range of play facilities. It's an aerial image of the site. The building is obscured by trees, but I've highlighted it red there. It's located on the western boundary of the recreational ground. The play infrastructure across the site can just be made out on that image there. Parking to the site is provided to the north and eastern site boundary. The nearest residential property is located immediately to the west, who object to the application. This is a view across the recreational site to the proposed kiosk. Hopefully you can see the arrow that I've highlighted the position of the building. This is another view. It shows a relationship with the objector's property. This is viewed from within the recreational ground, looking across the site towards the kiosk. and some closer views of the building that's proposed to be converted. So some existing and proposed floor plans, and the proposed elevations are at the bottom of that slide there, and the floor plan to the right. The building is effectively arranged in an L shape. It's proposed that an infill extension would be provided to form an accessible WC toilet. The further 2 toilets are proposed in the northern portion of the building, and to the south a small kitchen and service area are proposed, along with accessible access and a serving window. Waste storage area is proposed to the southern elevation of the building. It's proposed to serve hot and cold refreshments along with food items such as jacket potatoes, sandwiches and ice cream. A condition is proposed on the application to limit the preparation of hot food to only using toasters, microwaves and such equipment. No internal seating is proposed. So no objections from the Highways Authority or Ecology. Environment Health advised that following the submission of additional information, no objections are raised. Conditions are, however, recommended to ensure that the building does not operate as a hot food takeaway, has restricted opening hours, and to ensure that details of odour suppression and extraction are agreed. Council's Design and Conservation Officer advised that the proposed alterations to the building would not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area, and the bringing of the building into a functional use would result in a margin improvement on its current semi-derelict appearance. Found 1 letter of objection received from the immediate neighbour raising concerns in respect of hot food takeaway element of the scheme, operation hours, the site's proximity to Wilsingham School, disturbance from noise and odour, waste storage and collection, and antisocial behaviour. However, these objections are fully detailed in the report. About 11 letters of support. Again, these are detailed in the committee report. The proposed scheme has been assessed against relevant policies of the County Durham Plan. It is concluded that the proposal conforms to these policies, as it would represent an improvement to the character and appearance of the conservation area in the immediate location, and will not have a significant impact on the residential amenity, highway safety, or ecological interests, and will provide a facility that would benefit the users of the recreational ground. I have received some objections which have been taken into account and addressed within the report. However, on balance, it is considered that the concerns raised are not sufficient to justify refusal of the planning application. There's no material considerations which indicate a decision should be otherwise, and therefore the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve. Obviously, we have to hear from a number of people, but are there any members who have an immediate question that they want to make of the officer? Who's that, please? Liz Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Liz Brown, Neville's Cross. I just wanted to ask Mr Pilkington, how far is Strandfield from this pavilion? The actual house?
Yeah, thank you. Just bear me a second there. So we've got a distance of approximately 20 metres from the rear southeast corner of Strandfield to the building.
Thanks, Steve.
Obviously, the garden area lies directly behind.
Yes.
I'll ask a supplementary to that while we're at it. It states in the objections by the people, by Mr. and Mrs. Bell, that there would be only 11 metres from the toilet door. Sort of, could you? I'm sure that's in the report. Could you clarify that statement, please? Is that a correct distance?
No, I've measured that at 20 metres from the edge of the proposed building to the corner of the existing dwelling.
Thank you very much indeed. And what would be the normal kind of distance you would be looking for from if you were putting in public toilets to the residential property? What kind of distance would you normally be looking for?
Yeah, there's no set distance set out in policy, really. I mean, you've got your general separation distances of 21 metres between habitable rooms, but given the single-story nature of the building, the boundary treatments, where we feel that's more than sufficient distance to not result in a significant loss of amenity there.
Thank you very much, Steve. There are no people who wish to speak in their capacity as a parish councillor, so I'm going to move now to Councillor Anita Savoury, who is the local county council member. You're very welcome, Anita. If you'd like to have your say, that would be lovely, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Anita Savoury, the Weardale ward. I have taken legal advice that I am permitted to speak, after which I will then withdraw from the meeting. I would like to declare an interest that I am a member of the Parish Council at Walsingham, and I also have an interest in this project, as should the scheme be approved, I have allocated some of my neighbourhood budget to this project. I speak in favour of this application for the following reasons. The recreation field at Walsingham is truly a jewel in Walsingham's crown. It was gifted to the people of the parish. It is a popular venue with local residents and visitors alike. Indeed, it has been used by families for generations. Over the years, new attractions have been added to enhance the facilities. Some of the equipment is indeed adapted for disabled users. The recreation field is situated at the west end area of the village. In days gone by, a general dealers operated across the road from the park, which gained a great deal of trade by those using the park to purchase ice cream, lollies and drinks. This posed a risk as there was a busy main road to cross. The shop has been closed down for several years now, and currently the nearest shop is approximately 750 metres away. On a fine day, visitors, families and local children flock to the park. The facility of having a kiosk selling refreshment can only be an asset and add to the attraction of this facility. The new toilet facility is also much needed, especially when we have groups of children from the local primary school and nursery visiting the park. To use the current facility, you have to cross the busy car park and dodge the moving traffic coming and going. The kiosk will promote safety as people will not have to leave the venue to purchase drinks, ice creams, etc., which means children and adults will not have to cross the busy car parking area and indeed a busy main road. People who have pets are not allowed into the children's play area, but they could sit and enjoy a cuppa while keeping a watchful eye over their children. People with older children and younger children would have an excellent vantage point to watch over the older children using the skate park while the younger children were using the play area. Walsingham has recently been awarded the Walkers Are Welcome accreditation, so this kiosk would be on a popular route for them to stop and take refreshments. Many other parks have such facilities, example Darlington, and their services prove popular. The bowling green also hosts visitors who often bring spectators who may wish to purchase ice creams, teas or coffees. The toddler group operates from St Anne's Centre, and a kiosk would be an asset for the mothers and their children. As we begin to recover from COVID-19, we are encouraged to enjoy the outdoors. This kiosk supports that. As things currently operate, an ice cream van stands in the park. Its stock is very limited, but another downside is the engine is running all day while it is in situ on site. Just to clarify the position on the school children, they are not permitted off-site during school times, as this is a safeguarding issue. If the school children attend after school, then that is no longer the school's responsibility. When the weather permits, many parents from the primary school collect their children and take them to the park as a treat after school. Parents meet up and again, I believe they would use the kiosk for refreshments. The local football team play from this venue and team members, coaches and spectators would use the kiosk. Perhaps the two best reasons for giving support to this project it promotes tourism. The kiosk will create at least one job, possibly more in busier periods. And in these times, as always, every job is necessary and precious. In addition, I'm pleased to see the officers report that the concerns of the one objector have been properly considered by the officers, including those from the environmental health team. and however no objections are raised in this regard, subject to the conditions listed in the report to help protect the residents' amenity. It is for these reasons that I fully support the application set out before you today. Thank you, Chair and members. I will now withdraw from the meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Savory. Then normally we would have parish councillors to speak, but as you're aware, the parish councillor who's attending is speaking in the position of a supporter. So what I intend to do now is to move to Maria Ferguson, who is going to speak on behalf of the objectors. Are you there, Maria?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Now what will happen is you have 5 minutes to speak. After 4 minutes, Jill, not in a booming voice, but in a voice of authority, will tell you that you have a minute left. Don't let that throw you. It's just a warning. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, Maria. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Jeff and Michelle Bell, who live immediately to the west of the site. They're the people most likely to be affected by the development proposed, which will be positioned up to their garden boundary wall. The report states the proposal will be 20 metres from their home. This is incorrect. In fact, it would be only 11 metres due to an extension that they built to Strandfield, which is not shown on the Ordnance Survey plans. They're worried about increased noise in close proximity to their property, odours from the proposed sale of hot food, as well as the toilets. They're acutely aware of the antisocial behaviour and other problems associated with the existing toilets that residents on the east side of the recreation grounds suffer regularly, and they don't want the same problems. The proposed building will be a focal point for those queuing for and eating food. This will bring more intensive activity and noise closer to their home. It's not proper to justify this increased disturbance on the fact there are already other activities close by, such as play equipment. We've consistently raised concerns about how this application has been described, and in fact it wasn't until we appointed a barrister regarding this matter to scrutinise the officer's report and the decision and the associated threat of judicial challenge that the application was withdrawn from the last committee and the description of the development and associated conditions were changed. Nevertheless, there are still fundamental concerns about this application and the way it has been put forward and justified. Firstly, while paragraph 1 of the report describes the existing building as being in use for storage, the application description still states pavilion. This is misleading in the extent of activity associated in connection with the current structure. Secondly, it is clearly the intention of the applicant to serve more hot food than jacket potatoes, as indicated on the revised menu. The list of equipment repeated in recommended condition number 5 points to that fact. If the intention is to only sell jacket potatoes and cold sandwiches and ice cream, what is the need for a toaster, sandwich toaster, waffle maker, microwave, bain-marie, as well as a jacket potato cooker? Furthermore, condition 6 then requires a scheme to control emissions and fumes from hot food used to protect neighbours, which would not ordinarily be required for the cooking of jacket potatoes. It's the inconsistency between what is intended, what is proposed, and how the proposed use is to be controlled, which causes my clients a great deal of unease. There seems to be a real reluctance to call this proposal what it is and what it is likely to be, and that is a shop selling hot food takeaway. That is a hot food takeaway. I would suggest that this is because a hot food takeaway would be contrary to Policy 30 of the County Durham Plan. Policy 30 states in order to promote healthy lifestyles in young people, proposals for takeaways within 400 metres of a school will not be permitted. Further consideration will need to be given to the impact the development would have in terms of noise and odour. Where it is considered the proposal would give rise to an acceptable impact, the application should be refused. The application use is described in the report as sui generis, that is a class of its own. This is the reason stated in the officer's report, paragraph 53, for saying the proposal would not be subject to Policy 30, which relates to A5 hot food takeaways only. However, that's nonsense because the government recently changed the use classes order, removing A5 use entirely. Hot food takeaways are now sui generis. Furthermore, the menu is not and could not be conditioned, and so the planning authority would, in the event of an approval, have no control whatsoever over the extent of hot food sold as opposed to cold food. Even if 100% of food sold from the premises was hot, the applicants would not be in breach of this planning permission were you to give it. The Environmental Health Officer, recognising that hot food takeaway would harm the living conditions of residents, only raises no objection, subject to a condition the property does not operate as a hot food takeaway. However, recommended condition 6, requiring means of dealing with odour and fumes from cooking hot food on the premises, suggests otherwise. Such equipment can, of course, cause noise problems in its own right, with fans operating constantly.
You have a minute remaining.
This building is right against the boundary of residential property. I can't think of anyone in the same circumstances as my clients would be content with this arrangement. And I cannot understand why there is an insistence by a public body to use public funds to develop a site which is contrary to recently adopted planning policies and which will harm its neighbours. I would ask members today to put themselves in my client's position, carefully consider what it is they're potentially approving today and how it is proposed to be enforced and controlled. The correct recommendation, given the environmental health concerns about hot food takeaway operating in such close proximity to residential property and to a school in accordance with policy 30, is to refuse planning permission. We hope that members do that today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was very helpful. I'm going to start. I'm going to ask Steve, do you wish to come back and speak at this point in the proceedings?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to clarify the distance. We have checked the history of the site and I've just reviewed some recent aerial images of the site. The distance I've measured from to the proposed extension is approximately 20 metres. There are some ancillary garden structures in proximity of this at a closer distance. However, the main body of the building is around that 20 metre separation distance. And in relation to the hot food elements, I think the report covers this, that there is elements of hot food that are going to be sold. However, we are firmly of the opinion it's not hot food takeaway. The fact that a use sells hot food would not in itself put it in that hot food takeaway category as such. There, you need to look at the broad view of what is sold at the site, including the hot and cold drinks and the scale and volume of other foods that are sold there. And we feel that we would have sufficient powers to take enforcement action if this turned into a hot food takeaway and only sold hot food, which we feel would not be the case.
Have members anything that they wish to ask? Please forgive me, members, because I think there's things that need clearing up here. If you may just forgive me, that it was stated by Maria Ferguson that the category A5 no longer exists and that hot food takeaways are sui generis. Now, in the argument was that by reducing the amount of hot food offered on the menu, this changed it from an A5 hot food takeaway to sui generis. So that what the objector's point was that in fact, if we give permission for use sui generis, then it's not what's happening now they're worried about, it's what might happen in the future that they're worried about. And what they're worried is that if we give permission for a sui generis takeaway, they will then be able to expand the nature of their operations, and we've given permission for that. That was the point that was being made, and they therefore went on, and this is why they're so worried about the various conditions, about the equipment we're allowing, about the extraction fans that we're putting in, and sort of about condition 6, in particular conditions 5 and condition 6. So it strikes me that this is a major issue here. Neil, you've come in and wanted to speak. Can you clarify for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. So on those two issues, the correct use classification. So Ms Ferguson's correct. The A5 doesn't exist anymore. So there was a change back in September of last year that changed those A5 hot food takeaway uses. So they're no longer within any use class in the use classes order, which means the sui generis. And as members no doubt are aware, sui generis just means not within any particular use class. I think the issue that Ms Ferguson was bringing your attention to was, I think the argument went, well, look, if it's sui generis already, so if the application that's before you and about to be determined is a sui generis use, as we say it is, then it could change into a hot food takeaway use, which would also be sui generis. I think the problem with that argument is just because you've got one type of sui generis use does not mean that you can institute a different sui generis use without there being a material change of use. So on the basis that the use that's being applied for is indeed sui generis and is not a hot food takeaway, so we're saying it's a mixed use in these particular circumstances. If there was subsequently a hot food takeaway use instituted, that would be a material change of use, notwithstanding the fact that both uses are sui generis. So that I think that's the bottom line, that if there was a hot food takeaway use introduced here, that would be a material change of use for which we would have resort to planning enforcement powers. I think it's also worth, Chair, just revisiting, if we may, the issue of the separation distance, because I note that there is some dispute about this. Clearly, the objector says it's 11 metres. The planning officer says, having measured from plans, taking into account the extension that the objector referred to, it's 20 metres. I'm just wondering whether it's worth asking Ms Ferguson if she could just clarify where she's taking her measurement from, because it may be that we're taking measurements from different locations.
Maria Ferguson, are you able to clarify for us, please?
Chair, I'm going from information provided by the objector. I believe that Mrs Bell is in the room. I don't know whether she wants to speak on that point.
Mrs Bell has left, Maria.
On another issue, nowhere in the application or in the conditions or the decision that you would be issuing does it clarify what this is a mixed use of. That is the point. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mrs Bell has left the meeting, so she's not able to clarify the distance. On that one, we're going to have to just accept that there is a dispute about the minimum distance. However, we've heard that actually there's no set distance required anyway. And we'll just have to make a decision given the fact that people disagree on that. I want to come back to you, Neil, on the issue of the use. The key thing is for the Bells, as far as I can make out, that they're worried about this thing starting off in one way and then absolutely legally becoming something else. Now, the question therefore is, are you absolutely satisfied that the conditions and the terms of the planning permission that would be given or might be given, should we agree to it, that this would absolutely give the objectors the right to bring in planning enforcement and get any such extension stopped? This is the thing. What security does the things that we're putting in place give the objectors that this thing won't morph into a much more extensive hot food takeaway?
Thank you, Chair. So I think there's, if we just take a step back for a moment, there's sort of three possibilities here, I suppose. One is that it's a retail use, which used to be classed A1, which is now classed EA, somewhat confusingly, with an ancillary hot food takeaway use, which is what used to be A5 but is now sui generis, or it's a primary hot food takeaway with an ancillary retail use, or that those uses are what in planning terms we call composite, so the mixed, they're not one or the other, it's a mix of the two. Now, what the planning officer is saying is that in this particular case, he feels that the mix of retail and hot food takeaway is such that it is genuinely a composite or mixed use. Now, what we've got in those circumstances is a sui generis use, and that's, I think that comes across from paragraph 53 of the report, which actually talks about sui generis or mixed use development. That being the case, there can be fluctuations between those two elements of the use without there being a material change of use. So there could be more or less hot food and cold food sold without there amounting to a material change of use, because that's the nature of a mixed use. It's not fixed at, I don't know, 60% cold food and 40% hot food. There's no sort of fixed percentages as such, and they can fluctuate whilst it still maintains its mixed use status. However, there will come a point at which, if the hot food sales significantly outweigh the cold food sales, that you have to conclude reasonably on balance that this is no longer a mixed use and is a hot food takeaway. Now, if that was to happen, then I'm confident that would be a material change of use for which we have enforcement powers. And condition 5 is sort of designed to put a marker down in terms of where we think that balance lies at present, to enable us to make that judgment easier, if you like, should that situation arise. So drawing all of that together, my position on this is that should there be a significant increase in hot food sales over and above what is anticipated as part of this application, that we could make a case that that was a material change of use for which we've got adequate enforcement powers.
I have two members who wish to speak. Councillor Jewell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ivan Jewell, member for Burnopfield and Dipton Division. As often happens in planning, we are sort of led into a sort of a little bit of a fog. I always have to draw back to what we are about here. This is an application put before us, and we need to decide whether it is appropriate or not appropriate. There are too many what ifs, I feel, in what the objector is bringing forward, and we can't deal in planning on what ifs. And what we've got is we've got mitigating circumstances there. We've got conditions on there which mitigate, and also what we do have is we have other mechanisms to handle those what ifs if those what ifs actually happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jewell. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Neil has already answered my question. My question was, how enforceable is condition 5? And it sounds as though it's very enforceable. So I'm quite happy with that. Thank you.
Neil Carter.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, it was just to remind everybody that we have got another speaker, and I was just wondering whether we should sort of proceed to that rather than sort of descend into a debate on the merits.
Thank you very much. We had moved from asking questions to making points of debate. That's the case, but nevertheless, I think it's important that despite what Councillor Jewell so validly said, it's important that we address this issue. I'm not going to make the statement. I'll make the statement later. Right. Well, we do have now Sarah Ramshaw, who's going to speak as the applicant, as a supporter, and as a parish councillor all at the same time. So you're very, very welcome. So same for you. You've got 5 minutes and you'll be interrupted after 4. We look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Walsingham Recreational Park is a popular place for both existing residents and visitors. The park can be easily accessed on foot, bike, bus and car, with parking facilities available on site. The park includes play equipment, picnic benches, outdoor gym equipment, skate park, football pitch. Walsingham Parish Council are in the preliminary stages of gaining funding to construct tennis courts within the site. The Walsingham Family Walk is advertised on This Is Durham and starts in the parking area. The park promotes a good quality of leisure, sporting and recreational activities, and it is vital that there are suitable facilities on site to support this. The site currently has 1 WC kiosk to the northeast of the site, with 1 accessible toilet available and an ice cream van that parks in the parking area throughout the year. St Anne's Centre to the northeast of the proposal was considered by Walsingham Parish Council as a potential additional WC facility, but because of private functions there was a serious question raised on safeguarding issues for children and vulnerable people. The proposal is to convert and extend the existing single-storey brick building into a cafe with 3 toilets. The 3rd accessible toilet will be within the extension. The extension will be constructed of brick to match the existing. The proposal will be an effective use of an existing building located between the play equipment and the skate park. Walsingham Park is a popular park for local families and visitors alike. The facilities will enhance the existing attraction, support visitor economy and create employment opportunities. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Short and sweet, and stress the importance of it. Have any members got any question of the applicant? I have one. Sarah, have you presumably, I'm going to ask about how this food is going to be provided. I'm presuming that the parish council won't be running the shop itself. Have you got a contractor lined up to come in and run this, and sort of on the hours and the terms proposed? And if that's not yet battened down, sort of, have you done any soft marketing about whether sort of somebody may be interested to run that situation?
No, we've already got somebody lined up to run it, and they're already running the cafe that's at Hamsterley Forest.
Spot on. Thank you very much indeed. That answers my question. Have any members of the, let's deal with the questions first. Have any members of the committee got any questions of the officer or either the supporters or the objectors? I've just got one question of the officer. Steve, I was surprised that the school, particularly the secondary school, haven't responded to this. Sort of, I'm presuming that they were out with the area that you actually asked were they asked to respond?
Bear with me a second, Chair, I'll just clarify that. Yes, Chair, they weren't directly notified. However, there was a site notice and a press notice advertising the application.
I mean, the reason I'm asking this question is that the provision in the County Durham plan about hot food takeaways is not because we have an objection to hot food. It's because we do not want school children, particularly at lunchtime, dipping out of their proper school meals and going and eating rubbish at some local outlet. The time when this happens in secondary school particularly is it's at lunch times. Now, we were told earlier that the school children will not be allowed out during school hours, and so therefore would not be able to do what I've just said. But would that include lunch times? I'm just worried about school children accessing a large amount of inappropriate food, which is what the provision is there to stop. Can you address that, Steve, for me?
I wouldn't be able to advise on that, Chair. I think it'd be down to the school's policy. I would still go back to condition 5, and I think that does quite tightly tie down sort of the nature of the food that could be sold at the site. You know, there's no fries mentioned in that condition, and you know, if deep fat fries, for argument's sake, were brought in, serving chips and what have you, you know, that would be in breach of the condition. So, you know, perhaps the more unhealthier food would be restricted by that condition. But yeah, I'm unable to advise on how the school policies are.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, over to the members for comment. Oh, sorry, I've missed Councillor Jim Atkinson. Councillor Jim Atkinson.
Yes, Chair, just before you were going to go on to the comments, I was just going to ask Steve a question, and it's just to clear up for me. I know you moved off the point from the distancing, but just to clear it up, as far as I can see, there will be a distance from both buildings, which is the closest to each other. You know, there'll be a point at one building and a point at the other, where that is the point where the two closest points to each other, which they would have measured. And, you know, I'd be disappointed if that's what Stephen did. I mean, we shouldn't have a grey area there. There will be 2 points closest to each other, and I would have thought that's where the 20 metres came from. If there's a grey area, that might need clearing up. Thank you.
Thank you. I take that as a comment more than a question, Councillor Atkinson. Councillor Quinn.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Shirley Quinn from Shildon and Dean Valley. I just want to make a comment here. I mean, this building is only small in size. It's going to be a kiosk. The amount of room that's going to be in this kitchen area to be able to produce all of these vast amount of meals that we're talking about is in reality not feasible. And at the end of the day, when people go and they want to purchase these you know, food from this sort of thing, they don't want to wait any length of time. Personally speaking, I think it's going to be more like the cakes and sandwiches, teas, coffees, soft drinks, that sort of sale. That's what I would imagine it being, rather this emphasis on all of this. I mean, I know it is a takeaway, but rather than like hot takeaway food. I mean, I could be wrong, but that to me sounds more in reality what it's going to be like.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Jewell.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to make the point that at present there is appears to be an ice cream van that stands there on a regular basis. I believe they said all day, with its auxiliary, at least its auxiliary engine running, which is a health risk anyway. You know, I wouldn't like to think that we had children who were playing in a play area where we had this ice cream vehicle belching out into the environment. So that, you know, we're talking about healthy and healthy. Where we are at the present time, there is a very unhealthy element to it, and we're assuming to some degree that there will be an unhealthy element to what this we're calling it a takeaway. I wouldn't really call it a takeaway, but what this kiosk will provide. And for me, the balance is in favour of the kiosk rather than in favour of the situation that we have now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jewell. Councillor Chaplow.
Can I honestly say that I think this is something which has to have there, because if a person wanted a hot meal, they would go in to the cafes that they have. They have a lot of lovely cafes there, and if they wanted anything hot, they would go there. And I think the toilets for the children and, come on, crisps and a drink of pop on the way home from school is what is needed. And please think hard. If we wanted a meal, we would go into the village further in where there are very, very adequate and very good cafes.
Councillor Blakey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It sounds to me like this is going to be more of a sandwich shop than anything. We have enough policies in place to cover all our hot, cold food distribution points. The school, I can understand their point on the obesity for all that they haven't commented, and I'd just like to move this for approval because I'd rather have that there than having a van stood all day with the engine running. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Blakey. Who's this? Councillor Atkinson.
I'd just like to second that, Chair.
I have a mover and a seconder. I'm prepared to go to the vote on that unless somebody else wishes to speak before this is all closed and finished. Neil Carter.
Chair, thank you. It just occurs to me that it'd be worth trying to clear up this issue of the separation distance before we make a decision on it. Now, you know, either a decision is made that, you know, we accept that it's 20 metres or 11 metres, or I'm just wondering whether it actually makes any difference to the acceptability of the scheme in terms of residential amenity impacts. Perhaps we could just go to the planning officer and ask, you know, if it was only 11 metres as opposed to 20, would it actually make, in his assessment, any material difference in terms of residential amenity impacts? I mean, I can see it, paragraph 66 of the report, that there's mention of a close bordered fence and mature screening, etc. But I think it'd be worth just getting an answer to that, and then we can say where we go to.
Yeah, I'll come in on that, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think in the event it is less than 20. I am fairly certain it is. I am certain it is 20 metre separation distance. But even in the event, given the boundary treatments, the established use of the site, I still don't feel that would result in a significant loss of amenity that would justify refusal of the planning application.
Thanks for that, Steve. Chair, on that basis, as you say, we've got a mover and a seconder for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report. So I propose to do a roll call of members present and ask you whether you're for or against. I'm not going to ask if you want to abstain, but should you wish to do so, just let me know at the appropriate time. So I'm going to start with Councillor Atkinson. Are you for or against?
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Blakey, for or against? Thank you. Councillor Brown, are you for or against?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chaplow, are you for or against?
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Jewell, are you for or against?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn, for or against?
For the proposal.
Thank you. And then finally, Councillor Shuttleworth, for.
For.
Chair, that decision's unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed, and that is certainly so. Make a statement about that. I also, if I'd been asked, would have voted for this. In planning, you have to balance the gains against the losses. This is certainly going to be a thing which will enhance the community and which will be a valuable offer. However, it is not incorrect that we give full weight to issues of residential amenity, viability, and particularly the health of the school children and their eating, and that we considered those other matters. Nevertheless, we have unanimously decided that this should go ahead. Thank you, Maria Ferguson, for taking part so forcefully and so effectively. Thank you, Sarah Ramshaw, for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think, and therefore I'm going to say that we've accepted this. I think that's the end of the meeting, Neil, isn't it, really? Well, goodbye, if it's goodbye forever. Thank you so much for all you've done. So if I daren't say anything more, just in case, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, officers. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, bye.